I had barely switched off the engine when I heard the voice that would end up launching the strangest, most exhausting week I'd ever lived through. "Excuse me, just what do you think you're doing?" The sharp, almost shrill tone came from the sidewalk. I glanced up and saw a woman wearing a painfully bright pink cardigan, her hands planted firmly on her hips, like she was seconds away from issuing her own parking citation. Her hair was curled so tightly it looked shellacked in place, and her narrowed eyes glared at my truck, as if it had personally insulted her entire family. I was still sitting in my driveway. I stepped out of the truck, brushing dust from my jeans, trying to stay polite. "Just parking on my property, ma'am." She let out a scoffing laugh. "Your property? That's under HOA jurisdiction. You can't just park that here." She gestured dramatically at my truck like it was leaking toxic chemicals. For a moment, I honestly thought she had to be joking. "It's my land," I said evenly. "Bought it 2 years ago. The truck isn't going anywhere." Her mouth twitched into a thin, smug smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Not for long," she said. "I'll make sure of that." Before I could reply, she whipped out her phone and started snapping photos at rapid speed, circling my truck like paparazzi chasing a celebrity. The glare of the screen flashed in my face as she muttered, "This is going straight to the board. And trust me, they'll fine you until you regret ever pulling in here." I kept my voice calm. "Go ahead. I'll keep parking here." She sucked in a dramatic gasp. "Oh, we'll see about that." Instead of leaving, she stayed planted across the street for the next hour, standing like a guard dog while making loud phone calls. I caught bits and pieces drifting over phrases like code violation, unauthorized vehicle, and impound authorization. It all felt ridiculous until a black SUV rolled up. About 20 minutes later, 2 men wearing jackets with HOA logos stepped out, clipboards tucked under their arms, and immediately started photographing my property. I crossed my arms. "You're trespassing," I said. "Want me to call the sheriff?" One of them smirked. "We're here under community guidelines. This vehicle isn't registered with the HOA, so it's subject to removal." "That's interesting," I replied. "Because I'm not part of your HOA." They froze, clearly not expecting that answer. Before either of them could respond, Karen's voice cut in sharply. "He's lying. This property is part of the association. Take it away." I didn't realize it yet, but this was only the first move in a fight Karen had absolutely no chance of winning. The HOA guys exchanged uncertain looks. My calm demeanor had rattled them, but Karen wasn't backing down. "Don't just stand there," she snapped. "Do your job." I stepped closer, holding my phone up so the camera lens was obvious. "Let's make this easy. Leave my property right now, or I send this footage to the sheriff's office. And since you're wearing official-looking uniforms, I'll also mention impersonating authority." The smirk vanished instantly. They retreated toward their SUV, mumbling about needing to verify records. Karen, however, stayed rooted to the spot. "You think you're smart?" she sneered. "The HOA always wins." I tilted my head slightly. "Not when they're wrong." Her face flushed red, and she stomped off, jabbing a finger at my truck one last time like she was placing a curse on it. The next morning, I found out she had doubled down. I woke up to a neon orange sticker slapped across my windshield, a tow notice declaring the vehicle in violation. I ripped it off, my jaw tightening. The truck was legally parked on my land, but the date showed she'd already contacted a towing company. Before I even finished my coffee, a flatbed tow truck rumbled down the street. The driver, a broad man in stained overalls, climbed out. "Got a call to remove an unauthorized vehicle," he said. "This vehicle," I replied, tapping the hood, "belongs to me and is parked on my property." He frowned and glanced toward Karen's house. Sure enough, she stood in the window with her phone raised, waving him forward. "Sir," the driver said carefully, "I don't want problems, but I've got an order." I walked behind his truck, snapping photos of the license plate and company logo. "Then here's your choice. Tow this truck, and you're liable for trespass and theft. Leave now, and we forget this ever happened." He hesitated, then muttered, "Not worth it," before climbing back into his cab. Karen burst out of her front door. "What do you think you're doing?" she screamed. The driver shrugged. not getting sued. As he drove off, I could hear her voice crack with rage. This isn't over. I believed her. That evening, a thick, official-looking envelope appeared in my mailbox, stamped with an HOA seal. Inside was a notice claiming I owed $2,500 in fines for repeated violations. She was escalating fast, and if I didn't act, she might actually make this nightmare real. I stared at the $2,500 assessment and smirked. Karen had officially pushed too far. I picked up my phone and called the county property office. Yes, I said, I'd like to confirm whether my address falls under any HOA jurisdiction. The clerk answered cheerfully. No, sir. That HOA dissolved 10 years ago. Bingo. Next, I called my friend Mark, a lawyer who loved underdog cases. By the time I finished explaining, he was laughing. She's bluffing with an HOA that doesn't exist. Oh, this is going to be fun. That night, Mark came over carrying a manila folder and a portable scanner. We sat at my kitchen table reviewing every so-called official notice Karen had sent. They're all fake, he said, holding one up to the light. Wrong formatting, no county filing numbers, and the logo is outdated. So she's just inventing all of this to scare me. I said. Not just that, Mark replied. Impersonating an HOA, issuing fines, and attempting to seize property. Those are criminal offenses. That night, we drafted a certified cease and desist letter addressed to Karen Whitmore across the street. It was brief and direct. Stop all harassment, falsified claims, and unauthorized attempts to remove property or face legal action. I slid it into her mailbox the next afternoon at exactly 3:15 p.m. A violent knock slammed against my front door. When I opened it, Karen stood there gripping my letter like it was an attack on her entire bloodline. Her face was twisted with rage. How dare you threaten me? She snapped. I didn't raise my voice. You were warned. The next step is law enforcement. She laughed. But this time, there was a brittle edge to it. The police won't do a thing. Everyone knows me around. I leaned casually against the doorframe. Perfect. Then they'll know exactly who to arrest. She stomped off, muttering curses under her breath. Later that night, my security camera sent an alert. I pulled up the feed and saw movement in my driveway. Karen was creeping around my truck with a flashlight, crouching low like she thought the darkness made her invisible. She knelt near one of the tires and started fiddling with something. I zoomed in. She was loosening the valve cap. Mark's advice echoed in my head. Get proof. Then act.by morning. The footage was saved on 3 separate USB drives. This time, I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was laying a trap and Karen was walking straight into it. I called the sheriff's office first thing. Officer Daniels, a tall man with a calm, no-nonsense presence, listened carefully as I explained everything. When I showed him the video of Karen tampering with my truck, his expression hardened. That's trespassing and attempted property damage, he said. Plenty to press charges. We made a plan. He'd swing by that evening without drawing attention. The idea was simple: let her try again. But this time with law enforcement watching. At 8:42 p.m., Daniel's patrol car rolled in quietly and parked down the block. I stayed inside with the lights low, cameras recording every angle. Right on schedule, at 9:05, a familiar shape emerged from across the street. Karen, she was dressed head to toe in black, clearly convinced she was being stealthy under the streetlights. She carried a thick envelope, probably another fake notice, and a small wrench. She went straight to my truck and crouched near the front tire. Daniel stepped out of the shadows. Good evening, ma'am. Care to explain what you're doing? Karen stiffened, then turned with forced relief. Oh, officer, thank goodness you're here. This vehicle is illegally parked under HOA guidelines. I was just. Daniels cut her off. We already checked. There's no active HOA, and this isn't your property. The color drained from her face. No, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, he said, tapping his body camera. You were warned to leave this man alone. Instead, you trespassed, issued fraudulent fines, and attempted to tamper with his vehicle. That's illegal. Her voice wavered. This is absurd. He's lying. I stepped outside holding printed screenshots from my security footage. That's funny, I said calmly. Because the cameras don't. Daniels didn't hesitate. Ma'am, turn around. You're under arrest for harassment, trespassing, and attempted vandalism. The second the cuffs clicked shut, Karen's confidence collapsed. Wait, you can't do this. I was protecting the neighborhood. You were breaking the law, Daniels replied, guiding her toward the patrol car. Lights flicked on in nearby houses. Neighbors stepped onto their porches, whispering as they watched the self-appointed queen of the block being escorted away in handcuffs. It was a scene no one on that street would forget. As the patrol car pulled off, relief washed over me. Weeks of intimidation had ended quietly, not with shouting or retaliation, but with patience and proof. Still, something told me Karen wasn't done yet. People like her rarely vanish without trying one last move. The next day proved it. Karen spent the night in county lockup, and by morning, the story had spread like wildfire. The neighborhood enforcer had been caught red-handed. Mark called me, laughing. You're officially a legend. Folks are saying you took down the HOA all by yourself. I chuckled, but I wasn't celebrating. I knew Karen too well. 3 days later, her next move arrived: a letter from her personal attorney, packed with dramatic accusations of defamation, emotional distress, and damage to her reputation. Mark skimmed it and shook his head. Empty threats, no case. Same scare tactics, so we went on offense. Mark filed for a restraining order, backed by the security footage, sheriff's report, and fake HOA documents. The judge didn't hesitate. Karen was ordered to stay at least 200 feet away from my property and have zero contact with me. For a full week, the street was peaceful. I almost believed it was finally over. Then, one Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up to Karen's house. She stood in the driveway with her arms crossed, glaring as her belongings were loaded. Her face looked pale, drained, no fire left, just exhaustion. A neighbor leaned over and whispered, "The sheriff's department found more fake documents in her house. She cut a deal, had to sell and move." I watched as the last box disappeared into the truck. Karen climbed into the passenger seat without a word. No threats, no speeches, just silence. When the truck drove away, I let out a long breath. Months of tension vanished in seconds. That night, I parked my truck in the exact same spot she tried to claim. The sky was clear, the air calm. For the first time in a long while, it truly felt like my property again. Mark stopped by with 2 cold drinks. "You know," he said, raising his bottle, "this could have gone a lot worse if you'd taken her bait." "Patience pays." I clinked my bottle against his. "And cameras," I said. "Never forget the cameras." We laughed, but as I looked across the now empty street, I couldn't help wondering if this was really the end. People like Karen have a way of resurfacing different place, same tricks, but if she ever did, I'd be ready. Enjoying this wild HOA showdown? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping neighbor drama. Smash like if you think I was right to stand my ground, and drop a comment below. What's the craziest HOA story you've ever heard?